The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, can be heard every Sunday at 9 p.m. right here on The Answer San Diego. Life is full of circles, cycles, phases, and stages. It's your choice to ignore or embrace them. Motivational speaker, author, military veteran, and founder of the J.C. Cooley Foundation, James Cooley, and his guest will inspire and equip you to strive for your own greatness and overcome adversities. Listen to The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, every Sunday at 9 p.m. right here on The Answer San Diego.
The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, can be heard every Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on 660 AM The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth. Life is full of circles, cycles, phases, and stages. It's your choice to ignore them or embrace them. Motivational speaker, author, military veteran, and founder of the J.C. Cooley Foundation, James Cooley, and his guests will inspire and equip you to strive for your own greatness and overcome adversities. Listen to The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, every Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on 660 AM The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah. Dr. James J.C. Cooley. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley, and wow, we got another absolutely fantastic, sensational show coming your way. If you saw this individual on the show last week, she was fired up. So was I. So was most others. You're going to be even more fired up today because she's going to bring it back. And I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to tell you who it is right now because Michelle will beat me up. So I'm just going to hold that thought right there. But I am excited to have this guest back on today, Michelle.
Hi, I'm excited to have her on too. You know, she's just a plethora of information. And she's got such an extensive background in her career, and she's doing amazing things to help others. And we're just really honored to have her back on the show to celebrate continually Black History Month.
Well, you know, I always say that Black History Day, every day is Black History. We're going to make history every single day. And I am excited about the title of the show, the purpose of the show, and this guest. So, Michelle, I tell you what, first of all, whichever platform that you're watching us on, whether you watch us on E36 television, Transfer TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, and over 80 other platforms, welcome to the show. If you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do is just go to the platform that you're watching us on, ask any question that you might have. I promise you, we'll get you an answer. It's your life, and let's do it, Michelle.
Yes, well, the title of today's show is called The Historical Trauma That Still Lives Amongst Us. And we're welcoming back Dr. Stephany Powell. She's a Chief Educator and Senior Advisor at Positive Change Consultants. She's a leading expert on human trafficking. She's an Adjunct Assistant Professor at Los Angeles Trade Technical College, and USC. And she's also an author. She's going to talk about we all have been affected in some way by generational historical trauma. African-American collective trauma has been passed down through generations, has impacted our lives, and how some studies suggest trauma can stay in our DNA. And although intergenerational can be a learned behavior, we can change the course. So, as the former Vice President, Director of Law Enforcement Training and Survivor Services at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, Dr. Stephany Powell provided crucial training to law enforcement nationwide. Following her retirement, she spearheaded Journey Out, a nonprofit aiding victims of human trafficking, significantly expanding its reach. Again, she's an Adjunct Assistant Professor at Los Angeles Trade Technical College and USC, and she has educated over 12,000 professionals and authored key resources on human trafficking, including My Choice, My Body, My Rules, and Teaching Beautiful, Brilliant Black Girls. Recognized internationally, she continues to consult and train law enforcement on human trafficking and related issues. So please welcome back to the show, Dr. Stephany Powell.
Wow. It's
I laugh every time that happens, right?
I see that we got one of my friends who's over in Ghana right now. He's saying, Your Majesty. He knows a queen when he see one. I mean, how you doing over there, George, man? You're so wow. It's so excited to have you back on the show because when last week it was so great. I said, hey, we have to have a part two. We can't leave it off at that. We're gonna make people happy, probably gonna make some mad, but hey, it is what it is. So, Doc, for the people that might have not saw the show last week, can you tell them a little bit about your background? Just catch them up. Some of them might have saw the show. Some of them might have not.
Well, in terms of my background, as you said, I worked for the Los Angeles Police Department for 30 years. I left as a sergeant, but I had my master's degree by the time I joined. But the thing is that for me, I've taken my knowledge and have really being part of the community is really important. And having the community to understand law enforcement, and for more importantly, law enforcement to understand the community. I've just kind of continued that, and it's kind of just segued me into where I am now with the understanding of the dynamics of race. And that is included in all of my work, in everything I've done in law enforcement, education, even in human trafficking. Because unfortunately, here in the United States, race really, unfortunately, not only does it define us, and if we are not careful, it will define us individually. But as we were talking last week, we also see it in our systems, which continues the ideology of race and racism.
Wow. I want to get off into this topic of the historical trauma that lives among us, because many of us have went through or probably still going through challenges that cause us trauma, that cause us to feel a certain way, that cause us to just hold our head down because we don't want to stand up and we don't want to do all these things. So my question to you is, what roles does historical trauma plays in shaping attitudes toward law enforcement, healthcare, and other institutions that have historically marginalized Black Americans?
Wow. Okay. So I want to start with this because we have to talk about what is trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. All those things, if we understand that, then we should be able to understand it on a historical level. So, for instance, I work a lot with victims of human trafficking. And so a lot of them have been victims of several things that involve trauma. So sometimes a certain smell may remind them of their trauma. Sometimes, even for me as a police officer, I could drive past ex-police officer. I could drive past a certain street, and I remember something horrible happened, and I feel like I was there. So understanding how trauma can play a part in us. And then when we talk about it on a historical level, just to set the tone, think about it. I'm kind of old. I said last week that Harriet Tubman was my classmate, but I was born in the 1950s, which is, you had to come back on for that, huh? So I was born in the 1950s, which is 3 generations away from slavery. If you were born in 1970, it is 9 generations away. So when we define historical trauma, we're talking about something that not only has not happened that long ago, but when you talk about people that lived through the Jim Crow era, they're still alive today. So it's not something that happened so long ago and we're over it. Remember, racism is an ideology. So historical trauma really refers to a collective, multi-generational experience, and that has inflicted emotional and psychological injury within a group of people that share a specific identity. And so when we think about it, it has not only happened to African Americans, it's happened to any type of people that have suffered genocide. So it's not just us, but we're talking about us today, because the traumatic events that I'm talking about is not only genocide. We could talk about colonization, slavery, forced displacement. And so when we look at those things in terms of that shared trauma, that shared history of oppression, it does not go away within a generation. And remember when I talked about the significance of a smell or being or seeing something on a block? The brain does not tell time. So it remembers things in its realness as though it's happening today. And we react to that realness as though it's happening today. So therefore, when we talk about unfair police treatment, and we know that unfair police treatment has been identified as a specific form of racial discrimination. The fact that Black Americans have experienced police brutality much more often than their white counterparts. So if we understand that, and as we are training law enforcement about things like implicit bias, right? Because that's where those ideologies pop up again. I taught law enforcement about the whole thing of racial profiling. And one of the things that I liked was that we used the term that if race tips the scale for the reason of the stop, then it's racial profiling. Studies have shown that when minority groups are stopped, it may not be the stop, it's what happens after the stop, because the studies have shown that now there's extra questions asked. Now there's reasons to search the car. So it's what happens afterwards. So, and then remember.
Hey, Doc, hold that thought, because I don't want to lose that. We got to take a station break. After the stop is so important. So I want to come back to that, but I'll tell you what, whichever platform that you're watching this on, I got my main man, George, over in Ghana right now teaching over there. Hey, Join, ask any question that you might have. And anybody else watching, ask any question that you might have. Join the conversation. I tell you what, it's your life. And we'll be back with a lot more Stephany Powell shortly after this commercial break.
Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's the James Cooley Show. It's your life. Dr. James JC Cooley. All right.
A Black Man's Point of View is the newest Amazon.com #1 release and bestseller book from author Dr. James J.C. Cooley, featuring the perspective from 11 other contributing authors. In A Black Man's Point of View, Dr. James Cooley unpacks his thoughts and personal experiences about the challenges, stereotypes, and feelings of self-worth that many black men face today due to a 400-year ancestry rooted in slavery and colonization. Yet, how so many black men move forward despite this history. Most importantly, A Black Man's Point of View conveys that all men, regardless of race, creed, or color, are capable of love, respect, and dignity. Described as a map to a greater life from the heart of a man who's experienced life's misfortune and harsh conditions, James shows us how beliefs, convictions, and a healthy mentality can help propel a life worth living. A must-read for all. Order your copy of A Black Man's Point of View by author Dr. James J.C. Cooley today from Amazon.com or wherever books are sold.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, or hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? And everything that you do.
The James Cooley Show. It's your life. That's right.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. But I tell you, Dr. Powell got me excited because what she is saying, as I think, is it's not the stop itself. It's what happens after the stop. And that's where 90% of the issues and challenges and rules are broken and all of that. We're talking about police stops, especially when it comes to minorities. That what happens after the stop is where things get crazy. So, Dr. Powell, I want you to pick it back up from there because that needs to be talked about.
So again, the studies have shown that it's what happens after the stop. So they may not have known when that person blew that red light what color they may have been, but it's the questions that preceded. So if law enforcement is asking someone in a particular neighborhood or looks a certain way, are you on probation and parole? Are they asking that same question of someone who lives in Beverly Hills, or are finding reasons to search the car, or just that significant amount of time to do a further investigation? And so that's why not only law enforcement, but all of us need to really understand our implicit biases. Because if we have been taught that there are certain people that we need to be afraid of, law enforcement comes from society. And if that's what society says, then that means that I need to be fearful of this person because they may be Black, they may be larger than someone else, as opposed to the little old lady. And so when you understand that, and if you're saying, I'm keeping this person longer because I need to dig and dig and dig, because I know that there has to be something criminally wrong here, other than the fact that they just blew that red light. One thing starts to lead to another. Let me add to this part too. For the person on the other side, maybe that officer that stopped them, that officer is just seeing that person for the first time. But what about that person that just got stopped 20 minutes ago by someone else? There's a fatigue that sets in, right? There's a fatigue that sets in. And unfortunately, that's what can kind of set a tone for things to go backwards.
Fatigue as well as fear, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. You know, trauma comes in, and I thank you for the example you just gave, but trauma comes in so many forms, and we're going to talk about, you know, African Americans today. And before the show, I mentioned to you before we went live is that, you know, African Americans today, some of us say, well, you know, slavery, you know, reparations, all that stuff happened in the past. You know, it has nothing to do with me. I wasn't born in slavery. I was born, you know, 20, 25, 35 years ago. How could that trauma affect me when I wasn't even born during that time? And neither were my parents or grandparents. And they don't understand. Can you kind of talk about a little bit about that, Dr. Stephany?
Well, first of all, and I'll talk about this a little more in depth later, but we have to remember that that DNA caused by that unresolved trauma, it really comes down from slavery. It stays with us. That's how horrendous it is for us, that it sticks into our DNA. And I'll talk about flight or flight. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I also want to talk about, in answer to the last question, as it pertains to our mental health, because it didn't just stop there, right? So we see increased rates of mental health issues like depression and anxiety, and that can be due to limited economic stability, systemic barriers that we talked about last week, the reduced ability for social mobility, and a lot of this, again, all of it is stemming from a deep-rooted distrust of institutions, of that pervasive feeling of systemic oppression. And then all of this is stemming from that legacy of ongoing racial discrimination. One thing I wanted to emphasize that we talked about last week, in America, we are, if you can imagine a swimming pool, and we're swimming in this whole, and if the water was racism, because that's what we're kind of swimming in, and if each pillar represents a system, the education system, the juvenile justice system, the criminal justice system, we're all swimming in this together. So even though we're all affected by this thing differently. Some of us where our ancestors are the ones that had to deal with the ideal of slavery. But what about those that are swimming in that pool that are dealing with the ancestry of being the oppressor? We're all in this together, because now you're talking about vicarious trauma and the ideology that gets passed down from generation to generation. So that's why I felt it was important for us to coin this particular show that we're talking about. We're all swimming in this together because we all have been affected by this somehow through our ancestry.
Let me comment on that one, because I even in the last segment you mentioned the oppression. You know, I when I lecture, I give a lecture on OSD, which stands for oppress, suppress, depress. You know, oppress meaning that we are fronted with something or whatever, and it's just so bad that we just want to forget about it, right? Oh, that never happened. Oh no, so so what we do is we put it in, and it didn't happen, and we know it happened, but we suppress that, thinking that everything is going to be right and going to go away, and everything is going to come back to normal. And 10, 11, 12 years, 30, whatever suppress is going to rise. It's going to rise. And it causes us to be depressed. Oppressed, it happened, or the force against this, demons or whatever gets in your system, because you can't fight them all. The iron shield don't protect all of them. Suppress is like, hey, no, that didn't happen. And then when it surface, we're depressed. And we got a head down. We don't think that we worth nothing. We don't think we have purpose. Can you talk about that a little bit, Doc?
So, I don't know if you've read this book, but it's excellent, by Dr. Joy DeGuy. And the book is called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Healing and Injury. It is an excellent book because it really explains the feeling of fear and mistrust that so many African Americans feel, and it's contributed to, or it's attributed to, the experience both lived and inherited, right? So when we consider that we are not only walking around with our own lived experience, when we talk about suppression and all of that trauma, we're also walking in the shoes of our ancestors, right? So we need to really take a hard, honest look at our past, because that's the only way that we're truly going to be able to heal. We really have to address the cultural trauma that has been here and is shaping us since birth. And so when we couple all of that with existing laws, when we couple that with a system that keeps us from moving forward, how can we not help but be depressed and suppressed, by that? We are. So we're still in a healing process.
That's so painful right there, because sometimes we never get out the healing process because we're so damaged inside. I can only speak for myself when it comes to oppress, suppress, depress. But through understanding, through trust, through reaching out for the right help and being around the right people, doctors like you, that helps you gain your self-confidence back and your ability to know that you are here for purpose, regardless of what might have happened in the past. We sometimes have to push that past to the side and look forward to the future.
There's I was researching, of course, before I came on the show, and I stumbled upon a work that was done by Dr. Damon Holt, and he is a national trauma expert and certified traumatologist. And he talks about how about trauma and the root of trauma, and it being an injury and a wound, and what happens when it's not treated. And so he says, when you're traumatized, it really impacts the brain, and it really rewrites the brain, where the person is not the person that they used to be. So when we talk about flight or fight or flight, and the idea that we talk about that this trauma, unfortunately, we have inherited by our ancestors, we do that also because we haven't really repaired. Oftentimes in the Black community, we poo-poo the idea of therapy, not understanding why sometimes we overreact to things, because it's still in us and it's still in our DNA. And we're not that far removed. I was talking to my ex-husband, who we're still friends, and he was sending me this. He sent me this video where, and I think it was somewhere in the South, where this white man called him the N-word, and he does it several times. And finally, the guy ends up, and I'm not promoting violence by any chance, but he ends up hitting him. The reason why I'm telling this story, because my ex is 72, grew up in Georgia, and he said that by seeing that video, it triggered him and brought him to the same place in Georgia when he was 10 years old, and he went to the bathroom and a white man called him the N-word. His father heard that and ended up confronting this white man and fighting with him. Can you imagine a 10-year-old seeing that? That's traumatic in and of itself. But at 72 years old, being brought back there by a recent video just tells you how we have not healed. And so that's it's so important.
Wow.
Scars are still there.
Hold that thought. Michelle, I want you to pick it up when we get there, but scars are still there and not healing. I want to talk about, Doc, when we get back, what's your recommendation to the folks out there that have those scars that want to heal, but then they won't allow themselves to come out their comfort zone. So I tell you, we're going to take a station break. We're going to get back. We're going to talk a lot more with Dr. Stephany Powell. If you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do, just go to the comments, whichever that you're watching us on, ask any question that you might have. I promise you we'll get you an answer. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
I've seen a smile convey I love you. I'm proud of who you are. The one that keeps us close when we're apart. Talking from the darkness of all that we've been through. It seems that there might be a way to leave behind the loneliness we've known and live again life of need.
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Your life. Doctor.
Welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. Michelle, do you see those numbers?
Oh yeah, I definitely see those.
Oh, yeah.
They're amazing.
Yeah. Dr. Stephany, it's a lot of folks watching right now. I mean, I guess they are afraid to ask questions or anything, but I know a lot of them that's watching. I probably tomorrow when I go into the gym, I'm going to get some, questions and comments. But I want to keep it going. I want to pick it up where we just left off at. Because I think the topic that you were making toward the end is so important and going into the next segment. Yeah, so can you talk a little bit, go back a little bit and talk about the last thing that you were saying right before? I'm talking about the healing process, the letting go, moving forward, and et cetera.
Yeah, and I think in order for us to be able to understand the reasons why we need to move forward, and I'm going to go back to science for just a moment, that there's been so many significant studies that have linked historical oppression to the changes in our DNA expressions as African Americans, because as a people, we've become very hypervigilant. And so our DNA interacts with the environment, and our epigenome adapt for survival. So how do we survive through that water that I described to us? Because our DNA, it tells us, and our genomes tells us what we should do. So that genetic code does not change, but the expression of our DNA can change. So if we talk about epigenetic adaptation, the results that results in our behavioral changes, those become a cognitive ability for decision making, right? Because we are constantly in this fight or flight mode because we feel we have to fight all the time in order to survive. We're fighting to get a job. We're fighting to get a job that pays enough for us to work. We're fighting to get educated. You see how that happens. So I think when we restore cultural identity and when we live with a regulated stress response, so being able to understand why we're having these responses, then we all have this opportunity for self-realization and full expression of what? Resilience, even when we are in the face of adversity. And the one thing I think that we really do need to understand is that we can't heal until we confront it, right? We cannot heal what we do not acknowledge. Dr. DeGuy says the opposite of ignorance is not knowledge. The opposite of ignorance is truth. We have to tell our story. We cannot erase history by banning books, eliminating cultural studies, and acting like not only did this not happen, but it does not affect us today. So in the first part of healing is acknowledging that it happened and acknowledging that those hurts from before and that ideology still continues with us today as the result of slavery, because it's continued through our laws, through the Jim Crow era. It is happening in terms of family disruption. It is happening in terms of trust and safety. We're still swimming in the water because the pool has not been drained yet.
Wow, I love your analogies. You hit a point about being honest, being truthful about what happened, but a lot of people do not want to be honest and truthful. They just want to put a Band-Aid on it and just say, you know what? Yeah, it happened, but you need to get over it. And let me tell you something, and this is a question. African Americans and other minority groups, we have been raised to whether if it's something in the present or, the things that have happened in the past as African Americans, not to dwell on something, not to talk about it, not to seek mental health counseling, or, that's just how the world is. You need to move on. So sometimes we have been trained and taught not to talk about it. You have to be strong, especially Black men. You have to be strong and, not deal with it, talk to your pastor, but no outside help, regardless of what trauma you went through. And you gave a perfect example, the last segment, about being pulled over. You need to get over it, or you need to just be strong. How detrimental is that when it comes to really not facing your trauma and your fears, because you have been taught culturally that we don't tell our business to other people?
Well, that's interesting that you talk about how we've been taught, because we also self-socialize, right? So in other words, and believe me, I was a law enforcement officer for 30 years. I loved my job. And but what law enforcement had to also come to grips with was how were we doing our job in the community. And so that was one of the things that we had to look at, and implicit bias was one of them. 21st century policing, 20th century policing came into play in terms of law enforcement, just really trying to understand the communities we serve. Having said all of that, we know, unfortunately, is that sometimes there are some officers out there. There's some really good officers out there, but it's like any other profession. There's really good ones, and then there's ones that aren't doing the right thing. If my son I remember when my son turned 16, and I had to have that conversation of what to do when you're stopped by the police. Mm-hmm. I know that some of my white counterparts don't have to have that conversation, because I know that if my son does not react the right way when he is pulled over, it could cause more problems. It could cause either him going to jail. It might cause him there might be a use of force, and God forbid a death. So you have to have that conversation of make sure you turn your dome light on so that they can see in the car. Don't make any furtive movements in terms of, I know you're going to try and go get your registration out of your glove box, but tell the officer first that that's what you're doing. So if I were to ignore that and act like that's never a problem, and if he tried to treat that traffic stop like maybe young men that are his white counterparts, the end result could be different depending on who is making that stop. So unfortunately, we have to continue to have those conversations. We cannot ignore them. I think when I was on the show the last time, I believe that it was with you, I was talking about for my daughter who used to ride the bus and was being called, and my daughter's 28. She was 8 or 9 she was about 10 at around this time, and being called the N-word. And now I have to have a conversation with my daughter about race. But what I was very, very clear on with her is that not everybody that looked like the people that were calling her the N-word think of her in that way. But there are some that do. And so now I have to talk to her about resilience and not allowing that to define her. So there are certain conversations that we still have to have with our young people that other folks have the privilege of not having those conversations with. But we can't just ignore it and act like it doesn't exist, because why? We're still swimming in that pool because it hasn't been drained yet.
It's interesting, we hear, through people's comments that, racism doesn't exist. Well, maybe it doesn't exist for you, but it does exist. And that's basically being ignorant to really what the realities of the world is. I mean, yes, we would love for everything to be beautiful and happy and sweet and kind. And it is, you know, the world is not just horrible, but there are some things that are still going on in this world, and we have to face it. And I think we're almost getting ready to go to a break. Is that right, Dr. Cooley?
Yeah, but yeah, I want her to finish it off. We got 1 minute.
Okay. No, my comment was just that, you know, that people need to be aware of what's really going on. We may not like it. We may not even want to face it because we want to be happy-go-lucky, but you have to face the truth. Like you said, you have to face the truth.
I believe that, you know, just like what Dr. Powell had mentioned earlier, nobody is born racist. I mean, I don't think you born racist. It's taught, it's distributed, it's instilled. It's putting people in the environment that that's going to cause that to react. But I tell you, we're going to take a station break. I cannot wait to get back and talk to Dr. Powell more. If you want to be part of the conversation, just go to the comments. Ask any question that you might have. I promise you, we'll get you an answer. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
Dr. James J.C. Cooley. The James Cooley Show. It's your life.
Hello, I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley from the United States of America, and I am here to just say, first of all, I'm so happy and honored to be honored to be in the Coffee Book 2023. Unified Brain Z and the other organizations, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this collection.
But there's things in this world that you gotta know. To be the best that you can be, you wanna grow real big into a strong tree. To be who you're created to be, the one who's gonna leave a legacy is you. But you got to have these 4 C's. Create, collaborate, then you commit with confidence. Create, collaborate, then you commit with confidence. It's the 4 C's. Oh yeah. It's the 4 C's.
It's the James Cooley Show. It's your life. Dr. James J.C. Cooley. Yeah. Come on.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and wow, hey, Dr. Stephany, I'm gonna be real with you. You can have a platform on my show anytime. I mean, you are that good. I mean, and not just that, but you know the guests that I like. I like for them to be authentic, real. I mean, and not care about who's gonna get mad. I mean, I'm not gonna bring a bad guest on the show, but I want to bring truthful guests on the show, and that's who you are. That's who you are. I mean, a lot of people, they sit back and like, oh, this is just another professor that he got on. No. You went through the ringer. You learned the game. You know that. You teach USC. You teach all these things. You understand sex trafficking, all of that great stuff that most people, they think that's just a television thing. Oh no, it ain't happening like that. Those black people are lying or whatever. It's true. And awareness. We all have to be aware of things happening. We have to be aware of trauma, historical trauma, 400 years where we didn't ask to go nowhere from our land. They came and took us. And we came over and we built a lot of great nations, not just the United States, but it was like 8, 9, 10 European countries that they done went back and they done paid referendum and all that and think how well. But in the United States, in my opinion, I love the United States. I just hope that there's a lot of folks out there like my great friend Joshua Goldsmith that got an open heart. And there is no racism. There is none of that stuff. You look at a person for who they are, not just the color of their skin or the religion or whatever that is. And that Joshua, you see, he acknowledged Michelle's question. He's that type of guy. And what you got to say about that, dog?
You know, I was going to say, I was thinking for some reason in my head, I was thinking about your friend in Ghana. Because when you go to Ghana, and I haven't had a chance to go, but when you actually see where our people came from and where they were held in the dungeons, and everybody that has gone there has said that they just feel it. It brings us back to the reality. But I think for us, I think for us coming together as a community is always a visual sign of us being able to turn to each other for our comfort, support, wisdom, and love. And I think that is so important that we do this. And I think that we have to heal alongside white Americans as well. We have to heal together. And I know I keep bringing up that pool, but we're in it together. In that because that water racism is splashing on all of us. So we have to wash it off of us, and we have to heal together. And for African Americans, we have to really rely on our strength, our families, our community, in order for us to deepen our bonds of trust and safety. Because I think when we have that trust and safety, then that really allows us to step outside of that and continue that with counterparts that don't look like us. And just like I said the last time, when we talk about our pain, believe us. Believe us. Because once you believe us and see it and see the examples of this, then you too can help us in that healing process when we look at legislation issues, when we look at our schools, when we look at the systems that aren't quite working for us the way they do for others. It's only then when we see it do we have the ability to heal.
Wow. You mentioned pain. You mentioned being able to see it. You mentioned that our white counterpartners, and not just that, but any race, have to understand that just because you're in a nation that there used to be nobody but the people that were in a nation, same skin color, same this and that, and all of a sudden you open it up and you got a nation of immigrants, and you got nations of people where everybody's welcome, and we call it United States of America. When you have leaders that want to go back to the Western civilization and want to erase anything that prior to 1619, that's when 400 years in generations to come, that is bad. We have to learn to love each other. We have to learn to agree and disagree with each other. We have to learn to get rid of color, get rid of religion, get rid of black, white, Jew. I mean, we have to get rid of those concepts that they don't belong. We all belong. So we got about two and a half minutes left in the show. What's your thoughts on that, Doc?
And I think that as we look at it, and you're right, when you said not to erase, because that color blindness erases who we are. So because I need for you to see me and as my authentic self, and to be able to respect that, as opposed to, because I'm not going to blend in with everybody. I look different than other people, but respect me and value me as my authentic cultural self. And I think when we acknowledge those things and we embrace those things as we're navigating through that pool, navigate with me when I tell you I'm hurt. When I hear something that's politically said, I have a reaction if I think we're going backwards. Where for someone else, but I also have to understand that going backwards might mean something to someone else where that puts them a step ahead. Okay, got it. Being able to understand what that means to me when I hear it, and I being able to understand when that person hears it, and having that discussion of how do we survive all of this together so that we can become whole. So don't be blind of who I am. Accept me as who I am. If I want to wear my hair natural and be my authentic self, that does not mean that I'm negating you. It does not mean that I'm being militant towards you. It just means that I am finding a way to be able to navigate and feel good in my own skin in a nation and in a system that might treat me differently.
Wow. Wow.
You got me, Michelle.
No, I'm just saying this is a credible conversation. I wish we had more time, but thank you. Thank you, Doc.
Hold on. We're gonna make more time because I'm gonna put Doc on the spot.
Okay.
Doc, do I have 2 more shows out of you? At least.
Absolutely.
This is so incredible, and this need to be talked about. And for as an audience out there, there's nothing racism about this. There's nothing black people or just that. We just telling the truth. Yeah. When we tell you we're hurting, we're hurting. When we tell you that's not right, that's not right. If you did not grow up like us, I mean, in the situation under that, you can't even imagine what that is. No, that didn't happen. I get this every day. Now that this under this administration, it's the most non-racist administration. I said, how many people in the cabinet that look like us? This one, that's the HUD guy. I'm all that type of stuff. But anyway, I'm gonna close this out. You are welcome to be back on the show. Michelle gonna reach out to you, and if you have the time, we would love to have you back on because you are fantastic. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Cooley for putting together another absolutely positive, fantastic show. Black History Month, we still got one more day. It should be every day, but we're gonna continue to celebrate. Most importantly, I'd like to thank our viewers and our listeners for tuning in to the James Cooley Show. It's Your Life, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard, 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern. Always, always, always dream big, think big, and be big at everything you do. And also, you can listen to us on the radio on Sundays, AM 1170 The Answer at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and AM 660 The Answer Dallas at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Always dream big, think big, and be big at everything you do. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. It's your life, and we'll see you then.